Welcome to Get Over It, the consciousness transforming podcast for exceptional 21st century living. We have got a show today that is, I think, going to be probably the best of the year. We're going to be speaking with Maggie Craddock, and we're going to be talking about her new book, Lifeboat, Navigating Unexpected Career Change and Disruption. And folks, in this time of COVID, with people losing their jobs and people trying to change jobs, if they are still working, her information is definitely needed. So if you're not working, this is the show for you. If you are working and you're looking to make a change, this is definitely your show. So sit back, relax, get some information, and then you can go out and buy the book if you're ever so spirited to do that, because she puts a lot of information in a little book that is going to help you navigate your way through the work world. Now, the information shared on Get Over It uses intuitive and pragmatic insight to help you shift your consciousness to break through the blocks and release energy that is no longer needed. Yes, we're going to help you let go of the BS that has been holding you back. But you guys know I always ask that question, are you really ready to? And by the way, folks, BS is belief system. Now, a bit about me for my new listeners, Intuitive Sense Birds. I'm a third-generation intuitive with over 3 decades of experience supporting people to break through the blocks along their path. I'm a strategist for personal and professional transformation, revealing cutting-edge information that enables you to prosper and thrive. I spent 25 successful years in corporate America as an executive sales professional, and I am the founder of Healing Visions Ministries and the Northern California Children's Education Network, a 501c3 nonprofit. I also authored 2 books. I provide consultations and healings in all areas of life that heal the mind-body-spirit connection, allowing you to live your very best life. My clients tell me that I keep it real while providing them with accurate information to assist them along their journey as a spirit living a human existence. But they also say, if you really don't want to know, don't ask Monique. My background includes a doctorate in metaphysics, Reiki master teacher, ordained minister, and clinical hypnotherapist. So whether you are stressed, depressed, or possessed, I can help. To find out more about me and the services I offer, go to my website, and that is MoniqueChapman.com. And I invite you to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. My guest today, Maggie Craddock, is a veteran executive coach known for her work with Fortune 500 CEOs and senior management. She is also a certified therapist and author of The Authentic Career and Power Genes, and we're talking about her book today, Lifeboat, Navigating Unexpected Career Change and Disruption. Welcome, Maggie.
Well, thank you, Monique. I'm delighted to join you.
I am so glad that you're here. Now, before we get deep into the contents of your book and probably the other 2 also, tell us about your career. You were on Wall Street. So tell us about that and how you made the transition from, everybody thinks, oh, my God, Wall Street, it has to be absolutely positively and fantastic, the dream job. So tell us about your work there and transitioning into owning your own enterprise.
Well, happy to. My career on Wall Street was extremely rewarding. We won the Lipper Award twice. We had the top performing fund in the nation, and we had, I think, the largest mutual fund in its class for a while. And I can remember being on top of the world at a big investor conference, and my team was doing really well. And what I was really proud of was not just what we did, but how we did it, because we definitely communicated and had a very cohesive team working with us. But I could remember my inner being stopping me at one point at what many people would probably consider the height of my career. I mean, literally the team was doing great, the newspaper articles and everything. And I remember realizing in no uncertain terms that there was something else that I really needed to do with my life. And I couldn't shake that feeling, and that wouldn't go away. And then I remember reading articles about executive coaching, and I spoke to a journalist who was then working for Fortune magazine when they did something on executive coaching, and I said, what is an executive coach? And she said, Maggie, I have no idea. It's all over the place. If you're charismatic and persuasive and you have a golf club in one hand and a tarot card in the other and you're a good cheerleader, somebody's going to pay you, right, to be their sounding board. I said, that's really terrifying. She said, I know. So I began right? So with this similar, good girl rigor, right? I went back. I went to NYU, and I got a master's in social work, and then I went on to the Ackerman Institute for Couples and Family, and I started looking at group dynamics. And I ended up coming up with my own approach to how you go about this, which really I think is helpful for people, because whether they're, trying to navigate their career because change has been thrust on them, meaning you don't have a job anymore, you need to rethink it, or they've just got that feeling inside them that they're really not charting their own course. It's being dictated by outside forces, right? And there's something they should be doing about that. It really goes to the heart of being true to yourself, defining yourself from the inside out and not letting conditions do it for you. And so I got that wake-up call in the course of a very great moment in my career. I think a lot of people, however this pandemic is hitting them, are getting wake-up calls like that all the time.
But sometimes that wake-up call can be so frightening, because that C word is part of that wake-up call, and that C word is change, and so many people are afraid of it. So how do we get past that? How do we get past the fear of the change?
Change is terrifying. It terrifies me, too. I mean, I don't love it, right? I would love to have just a relaxing routine that was going to go on and on. I think, though, that what we have to accept is when changes happen, we're likely to have strong feelings about it, sometimes terror, sometimes frustration, I don't know. It's really important to accept those feelings and not waste a lot of valuable energy trying to outrun them, right, or ignore them or deny them. Accept them, but don't let them capsize you. So really discipline yourself, not necessarily to formally meditate, although I think it's great when people do. I know I try.
Meditate.
But meditate. Let's meditate. Let's do it now, right? But also really just stop and realize, look, I'm scared. I'm resentful. I'm frustrated. Whatever it is, it's okay. It's really cool. Just accept the feelings, but don't let them take you down. Accept the feelings, but don't let them drag you into some kind of narrative where you cast yourself as a victim or you try to catastrophize the outcome. Try to stay in the present and realize, you've got big feelings around this. They are going to pass. I get calls all the time from friends, from clients, from people I've worked with in the past, saying things like, Maggie, I'm terrified. I don't think of myself as a materialistic person, but I'm terrified about the financial implications of what could be unfolding in my career right now. Or I'm really frustrated with what's going on in my firm, or I'm really frustrated with what's going on in the world. And the minute people stop exaggerating to themselves, they get a handle on exactly how they're feeling and what that feeling means to them in realistic terms, in perspective, within the course of their own life narrative, they're usually able to shift it and figure out really constructive ways in the present moment that there's something that they can be doing, they can be learning, ways they can be evolving. I think that's at the heart of a lot of this.
Okay. Well, you have a quote in your book, and it really stuck out to me, and it is, power is about relationships. It starts with your relationship with yourself. And there are so many people right now because of COVID, and, some people, other circumstances, that they're not working. They are in food lines to, feed their family, and they can't figure out how to get medical care. And to me, that's a loss of power, personal power. How can we gain that back during the times that we're going through right now?
I think one of the greatest opportunities we have right now, Monique, is the ability to, because the world, for some of us, now for those of us that have family members or we ourselves are rushing to work as essential workers, God bless everyone who's doing that. You and I are, speaking today, right? So we don't have to be on those front lines. For all of us, we need to realize that in spite of the fear, in spite of the stories we're telling ourselves or the unexpected disruption in our lives, which, we're all asking ourselves questions like, how long is this going to last? It has given us a gift. For many of us, even if you're sitting in a food line, you're hitting pause. And that gives you an opportunity literally to go within and do some important self-reflection, because there have been so many things that have had us going so quickly in our world, trying to keep up with all these different messages about who we should be, what we should do, how it should work out. And I think in the midst of all of this, with this, almost enforced pause globally, a lot of people are coming back to what's genuinely meaningful to them and why, right? When people stop and they say, I just don't know what I want to do with my life and career. Well, sometimes they don't stop and realize that many of the beliefs, the things we're attracted to, the things that repel us, all of this, really come from ways we've been conditioned even early in our family system. We've just forgotten those early stories, right? Now we think it's just nature, but there may be a little bit of nurture in there as well. So when we stop and we think back on what work meant to our parents, right, the values that we grew up with at our, Joe Biden's always saying the kitchen table, but the values we grew up with at our kitchen table, right? What success means to us and why? How much money even factors into that definition? Because a lot of the people who call me most concerned about finances are not greedy or materialistic people. They're just people looking for a sense of security in an insecure world, right? And we can figure out a lot of things that we can do and a lot of resources we do have. And one of those most important resources is time. And if we have time for self-reflection, we can really give ourselves a gift of trying to embrace that as opposed to trying to avoid it or outrun it or distract ourselves.
Okay, so how do we get from a point of being depressed because we've lost our job, our friends have lost our job, we can't figure out anything, to get from there to a point where we can go within and truly take a serious look at our life situation? Because my belief is if you don't know where you're at, you can't get to someplace else.
Absolutely, and sometimes I think, and we're all saying this, sometimes I think it's asking the right questions. And, now I look at the story of the Titanic because those survivors on the Titanic asked themselves some timeless questions that are really important for all of us today, the same way that they were important for people who at one point thought they were on a ship that was heralded as unsinkable, and the next minute they're huddled together with complete strangers in tiny boats in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean fighting for their lives, right? So this isn't much more fun than being in a food line is, right?
Right.
But you're asking yourselves questions like, okay, how bad will this get? Who can I trust to help me survive? And most important, how will going through this situation change me? And one of the most important things for people in this process is to strengthen their trust in their own decision-making process under pressure, thinking for themselves, aligning their thoughts and their feelings and their intentions in the present moment. And the way that we talk about this in Lifeboat is, when it's business as usual, most people are pretty objective about how they think. Hopefully they're a little strategic about it. Emotionally, most people can withstand a certain amount of frustration and still keep their game face on and still stay focused on whatever they're doing in the course of their day. But you ramp up enough pressure for a human being on enough different quadrants, and you start seeing things like everybody's thought process isn't so objective anymore. Suddenly it's black and white thinking. It's really judgmental. You're for me or you're against me. We've seen a little bit of this bouncing around in the world, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Right? Or those emotional triggers, those things you used to be able to take in stride, suddenly like something happens and you blow. Or you just become so depressed that you don't want to get out of bed. Whether you're turning that frustration internally or externally, that's your style, right? But it becomes a little bit overwhelming, those emotional triggers. And I think one of the things that's really important that comes from Lifeboat at this time is understanding that people matter. People really matter. When we were going through a period where everybody could operate on automatic pilot and that was good enough, particularly in business, a lot of people would look at relationships as transactional. They talk in terms of networks, but not people they really knew. And what we talk about in Lifeboat is the real importance of human beings and establishing rapport with them, because one thing those lifeboat survivors realized is that nobody was expendable, because you cannot row a lifeboat through the waters of the Atlantic on your own. Well, as human beings, we can't realize things that we'd prefer not to know about ourselves without the help of other human beings. They're the ones that can help us see what we might have really gotten good at not knowing about ourselves and how to shift that And that improves our relationships in our families. It improves our relationships in our communities, and definitely in our careers. It helps us align ourselves with possibilities that are going to get us through this thing and move us forward when we get to the other side of it.
Okay. In your book, you talk about 5 ways to empower yourself if you're stuck or struggling. And you've kind of alluded to some of them, but could you go through them point by point so the audience is clear on what actions they can take?
Well, I'm always saying that, the conversations you have with other people, and if these aren't the same 5 things because there's a lot of things we talk about in the book, but the conversations you have with other people are really important. There's no doubt about it. When you're interviewing, you want to put your best foot forward. You want to do your homework, all of this. But the most important conversations you're going to have in the course of your life or your career are always the conversations you have with yourself. Mm-hmm. And be objective about those. Particularly when you're scared or you're worried, and we've spoken about this, Monique. How are you talking to yourself? Are you talking yourself down with some sense of compassion? Are you accepting your own feelings, or do you have a voice barking orders in your head? What's going on with those conversations with yourself? Are you creating a narrative that's all doom and gloom where you're casting yourself as the victim? Or can you shift that script and look in the present for the strengths you may have in yourself you didn't realize, the resources right in front of you? What's going on in the conversations with yourself? The other one is, and we've alluded to this a little bit, is try to accept your feelings with as little judgment as possible. Don't waste valuable energy suppressing them. It doesn't do any good. It's just going to take up a lot of energy, and they're going to come out sideways anyway. I can't tell you the number of times a client will call me up and say, I tried, Maggie, and I just hung up on a Zoom call because I got so frustrated with people who weren't doing what I told them to do or didn't seem to understand. I had to get off before I lost my temper, and now they're all wondering when I'm going to hop back on again. What's up with this, right? And I'm like, you know what, you can get back on there. And this is what we call that lifeboat learning moment. And those same people, when they learn the value of stopping and centering their thoughts, their feelings, and their intentions in the present moment, which really beats trying to think yourself out of a situation every time. When they really get this, they'll find they'll be in a really tense meeting, and somebody will say something with just a touch of humor that diffuses the situation, and then they'll realize, oh my gosh, that was me. Because when they get better about being easy with themselves and accepting themselves and giving themselves the benefit of the doubt, because we're all just human, they get great at empathy with others at the same time. Our ability to not overreact to others and express kindness and establish rapport is actually seated in the quality of the relationships we have with ourselves. I think that's a really important point, right?
I agree with you. I agree with you.
And then related to that is, the third one, you don't want to get so wrapped up in how you're coming across or the point you want to make that you lose sight of how other people feel about themselves in your presence, right? Because it's hard for all of us. So some people get so urgent. I mean, I see this when I watch the news all the time. Some people get so single-mindedly focused on what they want to get out of the conversation or the statement they want someone else to make, right? That they're literally everything about their body language, their tone, the nonverbal dimension of it is guaranteed to create defensiveness, right? And when we just stop and realize that one size doesn't fit all in terms of opinions or values or priorities, we stop. And we just try to honor the other person in the moment. Now, when they're bold-faced telling them what's so wonderful is when you look at the mindset that was influencing most people at a human level when they took off on that ship and they thought this was going to be just the biggest adventure of their lives, right? It's what I call the big ship mindset. And it wasn't, that big ship mindset wasn't just about the size of the boat. It was a mindset that was rooted in old norms and what had worked in the past. And it took those norms and stretched them to its optimistic limit. Whether you were in first class or you were a member of the crew, you had a part to play. You played that part. You ignored feelings that seemed to take you off track. And, the big ship mindset is, get as much in as you can. Faster is better, all that larger-than-life impression management stuff, right? And then suddenly everything changes. And here are these people in those lifeboats. And in those lifeboats, it's about being present in the moment, right? It's about taking a strategic pause before you take action because you're in an environment where you have more questions than answers. And then this leads me to my first point. As opposed to just reading from a script or thinking your way through it, the Lifeboat mindset is about aligning your thoughts and your feelings and your actions in the present moment. And when you are in a situation where you don't know what the new normal is going to be, that's vital. You can't think your way through the unknown. You have to have that inner alignment to navigate the unknown. And then my favorite part, I think, of this that really translates itself into action for other people is one of the things that comes from people mattering, or the big shift we talk about in organizations and looking for organizations where you can thrive, is this idea of making a shift from the self-help mindset, which is understandable, and we can talk about the virtues of that as well, to what I call the us-help mindset. And one of the things people do when they start to do that is they start to make a commitment to doing small things, continuous things that benefit other people before they stop to calculate what's in it for them. And that is a really good altruistic reflex to develop. Because regardless of what anybody else thinks, it empowers you. The person you start to like and approve of when you navigate your life that way is you. So even if you're having a terrible day, even if you're discouraged for that one day, and it's difficult to sit that day out from sunrise to sunset, if you make a small effort, not to make it all about you, but to do just a few simple things, check in on someone, do something kind, offer that, it'll give you a boost of positive energy that will help keep you going, one row of the oar at a time.
Yes, and it's so, sometimes it's difficult for people to get to that space, but since we have a lot of downtime right now, we have the room to reflect and create. Folks, we're speaking with Maggie Craddock, her book, A Lifeboat, Navigating Unexpected Career Change and Disruption. You can check her out at her website, and that is workplacerelationships.com, where you're going to find a wealth of information. And actually, she has a free a quiz on her website that is very potent. So check it out and take the quiz. You'll learn a lot about yourself. I did. And I thought I had myself pretty much together. But, you know, there's always something new to learn. It doesn't matter how old you are.
Well, thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
I just wanted to add one more thing for your listeners, too. While you're thinking about things that you can do and you can change at this time, I think one of the most important shifts in Lifeboat is, you know, one of the questions we ask, but it's the same question the Titanic passengers asked, is who can I trust to get me through this thing, right? And clearly, the book goes through things you can do to strengthen your ability to trust yourself and your own decision-making process when you're facing the unknown. No doubt about that. But the other thing is invest in relationship with people who remind you to stay true to yourself under pressure, to be authentic under pressure. Who, if you're facing questions like, should I stay in this job or should I leave? Or should I try to do this professionally or try to do that? Not people who are going to seize on the opportunity to give you unsolicited advice, but people who will just listen to you, right? And say, yeah, okay, I see where you're going with this, but are you really being true to yourself, or are there some feelings here that you don't want to acknowledge that you may be suppressing, right? Are you clear about your motives in terms of why you're doing what you're doing? Because the most important things that we can amass in this period are a support system or a feedback group, whether they're professional, personal, or both. And some people have this in their spouse. They have a best friend. They have someone on speed dial. But you really want people in your life that will listen to you without telling you what to do. They will just listen and comment on your ability to be true to yourself. Because one of the things that happens in rapidly changing times, and I don't think that I'm stretching it to say that we're in one of these rapidly changing times, right?
Not stretching.
Is it, right, it's, yeah, you know, here we are. Is it isn't just one decision we make, Monique. These decisions are coming at us hard and fast on every single level in terms of what we're doing with our families, whether or not we go to a grocery store, how we're operating with new people in our teams, whether or not we're going to change jobs or living locations or what we're going to do. And developing these Lifeboat skills, right, about strengthening our relationship with ourselves and the way we trust our decision-making process under pressure, identifying people who can really give us good feedback just on whether or not we're being true to ourselves, not what we're doing, but the thought process behind why we're doing it, and then also identifying places where we can thrive, organizations, communities, systems that support our core values, because the group energy that we expose ourselves to when we're taking part in things with other people, from work to community action to anything, will impact every facet of the quality of our lives. I think that's important to think about too.
Yes, it does, because, if you're working outside the home and you have issues, sometimes you bring those issues home. I tried to make it a clean cut when I came home to leave work at work. And most of the time I succeeded, but sometimes not. And when my family was looking at me out of the side of their eyes like I was crazy, it's like, okay, a little bit over the top, let's dial it back a bit, because it's not their issue, it's mine, It was mine. But let me ask you this, say someone, who's still fortunate to be working, and they're working in a major company, major corporation, and they're having issues, they're in management, they're having issues with senior management where they can't get their ideas heard, or their ideas are expressed and then the boss takes the information as if it's their own. What advice would you have for someone who is, they're happy, so they say, with what they're doing, but they're just in a situation where they've got a predator for a boss?
That's a very difficult situation. We talk a lot in the book about examples that are very similar to this. First and foremost, this kind of thing is going to happen. I joke with people sometimes that the real source of mastery in a career is when you actually get credit for a few of your ideas, that many of your best ones have probably been branded by other people, right? Like, right. So I did these three things, but the 300 that other people took credit for over here. That kind of happens in business, so you sort of have to sit loose in the saddle around some of this. But what I talk about in Lifeboat is, first, in your relationship with yourself, if you can deal with what I refer to as the inner iceberg, okay? And this is this sense of feelings that we deal with that's below our conscious awareness most of the time. For some people, it's a fear of authority figures. For some people, it's just a sense that if they don't look out for themselves, no one else will. It can be whatever that belief system is, and when you go through some of the questions in the book, you'll understand that. You start getting at the biggest emotional triggers. So let's go straight to this problem. Let's say that your boss, takes credit for your work, right? Obviously, one of the things you need to think about is, are you the only one who notices this? Okay? Or other people on your team noticing it as well? Because when it happens to you, you feel very alone, right? There's almost a sense of shame and being exploited at this level. But you may not be the only one who knows. And you definitely probably aren't the only one who's experienced this, unless you're the only person on the team coming up with great ideas. The next thing is, are you doing your boss's job, right, because you're really talented and you want to add value, or are you just doing your own? I mean, there's a lesson learned here. If it happens to you once, right, 3 strikes in baseball, then maybe the next time, right, you're not quite as forthcoming until you get, just a sort of a rhythm of how the way that this problem has been solved is going to filter up. There's that, right? The next thing is, look for the value you can add, because there's 2 things going on in the course of a career. There's doing a thing, and there's actually getting credit for being the one who conceptualized and executed it, right? And so you want to advance as a leader as well as a thought leader, let's say, okay? And so you want to be sure that you are becoming a person who is respected, who has integrity, and who is a unifying force within a group. You might be able to take credit for an individual idea and steal it, but no one can steal the emotional tone that actually inspires unity in a group. And that's where an awful lot of agility comes in. And also, the more confident you are in yourself, in your own creative flow, in your own abilities, and in your own resilience, regardless of what happens, the less flustered you're going to be. And when you're solid in your own energy and yourself, you find that you're not a target as much with other people. It's really very interesting how people who are truly confident in themselves, even though they don't say anything, they've got that energy and sense of presence, that people don't rip off their ideas quite the same way.
Okay. How can we get to the point where we truly value ourselves? We've done the reflection work that you're talking about, and we value ourselves, and we're navigating within a group that doesn't necessarily value the group. How can we have positive input without feeling that we're just being put down or lost or deflated?
Can you give me an example? Can you give me a scenario, Monique, of something you may have heard from someone that's called into you or discussed this sort of thing, so I can get real specific with it?
Okay. Got a client who works for a major company that's having a huge sale next couple of days. It's extremely well known. The workplace is toxic, and when they go to the group, and they're in leadership, but they go to the group and they express, what should take place, what needs to happen. It falls on deaf ears. And then when they run it by superiors, the superiors looking at them saying, well, if you can't handle this, get out. I mean, those are the exact words that I was told. So how can you get the group's input to move forward when they are fighting against you, and then upper management is not being supportive?
Well, I guess you have to ask yourself, am I solving for the right problem? Okay? What really is the lesson in this situation, right? And what really is going to be the ultimate outcome? Because it sounds like in that kind of no-win situation, I mean, we always have to ask ourselves, what's my work, what's the other person's work, right? So if the superior is involved or struggling with a little dysfunction that they haven't invited themselves to work through yet, and that's often the case, right? Then you have to say, okay, so I'm here with poor leadership in a situation with a lot of people where there's going to be some frustration today, right? What's the most value that I can add in this situation? This actually takes me straight to an example from Lifeboat. Remember on that Lifeboat when Margaret Brown got on Lifeboat number 6 with Robert Hitchens, and he was supposed to be in charge? And he just kind of underwhelmed everybody and imploded and said, we're all doomed, and wouldn't help row, and just was at a loss with people, right? And this poor gal is a gracefully aging grandmother who really only got on the Titanic to get to the side of her sick grandchild. So she didn't really want power in the military. She just kind of wanted to live through the night, right? And so the first thing she did was, suddenly Robert Hitchens, who's supposed to be in charge, is fighting with another guy about who's in charge, and all these women on the Lifeboat are kind of looking at each other like, are you kidding me? Please, guys, clean this up, right? She starts looking around for what she can do in the present moment. She notices people from steerage who she was from first class, didn't have enough warm clothing, gives them clothes. She notices the other women from first class kind of losing it because they're used to people smoothing things over for them, and things are certainly not going smoothly. So she's talking them off the ledge. And then she notices that even though they're not moving because the women are too weak to pull the oars through the water, if she organizes them 2 to an oar, she can get a rhythm going. She's creating a sense of unity. They're staying warm. They're not going to freeze to death, and they start to move. And that's when Robert Hitchens actually looks at how effective she's being and decides he's going to shut her down because he wants to be in charge. And not until that moment, was when she stood up and discovered one of those strengths that she didn't even know she had. She stood up in that lifeboat and she told him if he didn't knock it off with the pessimism, they were going to throw him overboard. And everyone on that boat unified behind her. I always say in that example, Margaret Brown didn't think her way to greatness. She wasn't looking for a naval career. She aligned her thoughts and her feelings and her intentions in the small moments of what she could do for other people, one person at a time, and greatness found her in that alignment. So let's take the situation where you're going into this sales thing. You look around for everything you can do to be effective and keep the energy of the other people you're working with as positive and productive as possible, however humble the task. And you get through the day. That is your day. Because you can't speak truth to power if power is so drunk on adrenaline and nervous that they can't hear you.
They're not listening,
right?
Yes.
So there you go.
Yeah. Okay, so for that client, girl, this was expressly for you. So, take from it what you wish.
Whoever you are, you'd be surprised. If you go through your day really trying to focus on the positive things you can do in the present. Earlier, Monique, I mentioned that altruistic reflex of doing things for others before you calculate what's in it for you. A client of mine the other day was interviewing for a job, and he goes rushing in, and they've all got their masks on in Starbucks and everything, and you have to be so careful, and this is Manhattan. And this young woman comes in just absolutely at 6s and 7s, and she's late to work, and she needs coffee, and he said, how do you take it? She said, I take it black. He said, take mine. She said, I can't. He said, honey, just go. I've got plenty of time. I kid you not. That woman turned out to be the receptionist where he was interviewing.
Oh, wow.
You never know, right?
You never know who's passed. You never know who's passed.
You never know.
Now, you have 2 other books. You have Power Genes and you have The Authentic Career. Why don't you give us a capsule overview of each of those books? Because I think they all kind of like dovetail and intermix together.
Thank you. I'd be delighted to do that. The Authentic Career is the first book that I wrote, and it's really it's following the path of self-discovery to professional fulfillment, and it's literally a guidebook for people who don't really know what they want to do professionally. They really want to take what other people have thought was a good idea for them in their careers and transcend that and do something they feel is genuinely authentic. So there's a deep dive in that book in personal exploration and exactly how you look at maybe some of the patterns that unfolded with your grandparents, your parents, your siblings, and how that influenced what you found yourself doing. And now that you've done this, what's going on with your own experience when you pivot and you do something different, right? Power Genes is very interesting because Power Genes is about the way that we wield and respond to authority and how the power that we have in our dialogues with ourselves, others, and organizations kicks in faster than the speed of thought. And it's the conditioned responses that come from the emotional dynamics that we experience from the first people that ever had power over us or showed us what power was. And that's the caregivers in our family system. For many people, it's their mother and father. Some people are adopted. There's a whole lot of ways of looking at it. But if you've got, let's say, a paternal caregiver, a father figure that was very authoritarian, watch out when your dander's up, that may come out of you, right? If you've seen these dynamics where you've got, a parent who was very reticent and no matter what they said in conflict, they couldn't win because they were dominated by another person, you may have internalized a little bit of that. And you may get really flustered if you don't get a certain amount of validation and approval from the people around you. Maybe a little bit more flustered than you need to be, right? So there's all sorts of ways of looking at power styles and whether we sort of react to a challenge by sort of leaning into being more like a dictator or leaning into being more like a doormat, and how we find the balance in all of that so that we can move forward and operate from our strengths.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing about the other 2 books. We're almost at the end of our time, but what pearl of wisdom would you like to share with folks today?
I say this to people all the time, and I really do believe that it's true in this period, Monique. You can have a good career if you're smart, no doubt about it. But you will only have a great career if you're brave. And that means being brave enough to look at what you're most afraid of, what rattles you emotionally, look it in the eye, accept it, and move through it. That means being brave enough to take meaningful risks on your own behalf. And that means caring about yourself enough not to just think about your career in monetary terms, but realize how vital it is for you to be able to identify and align yourself with organizations that reinforce your core values, because it will impact every facet of your quality of life.
Okay, thank you for that. And how do you work with people today? What are you doing? How can they connect with you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, probably best to key into my website, workplacerelationships.com. We do coaching with senior executive groups. We do coaching with teams, and we also do coaching with individuals.
Okay, and folks, while you're thinking, oh my God, I don't have any money, yeah, you can find it. If it's really something that is really worth it to you, you find it. And, it's important to make an investment in yourself, because if you don't invest in you, nobody else will. So just a little tidbit there. But, Maggie, thank you. Thanks so much for being with me today. I truly, truly appreciate it, and I am honored that you've shared all this information, because this is timely. People need this now, so thank you very much.
Well, Monique, thank you. It's been a complete pleasure.
Thank you. Likewise. And to the audience, thank you for being with us. I truly honor and appreciate your time and attention, and I want you to remember that the most important choice that you can make is what you choose to make important. Consider making the masterful choice of having a wonderful relationship with yourself, understanding yourself so that you can go out in the world and help others. Abundant blessings, light and love to all. Agape.